So Moven is a startup based in New York. We've raised $24 million to date. We have essentially the world's first downloadable bank account.
Brett King, CEO and founder of Moven.com and the Moven mobile app, shows 007. I am Mitchell Chadrow, your host, and this is the Listen Up Show. Please sign up to my email list at mitchellchadrow.com/sign-up. mitchellchadrow.com/sign-up. To get the show notes, head over to mitchellchadrow.com/show 007. Brett, we are ready to listen up, so are you ready to share your story?
I wear many different hats these days. I am gratefully a best-selling author. I'm just launching my 5th book right now. It's called Augmented, Life in the Smart Lane. It's already, today, as I look at Amazon, is the #1 new release in biotechnology and robotics, so that's pretty cool. My 5th book, previously I did Bank 2.0, Branch Today, Gone Tomorrow, Bank 3.0, and Breaking Banks, so I was a futurist but in the banking space. Augmented is a general look at the future and how society is going to adapt. My background, though, is in technology, and I've always been in this intersection between technology and business. I started as a coder, programming many years ago, and then worked in project management, introducing technology into large organizations. Had my own software business at the age of 22, and expanded that into sort of a small, multinational, in that we had representation in 2 or 3 countries outside of Australia, where it was my home country at the time. Went to Hong Kong in '99 to lead the e-business practice for Deloitte at the time, based in Hong Kong. Then joined an advertising agency called Moven Media, which is now part of the Publicis Group, I understand. And then from there, went to Dubai for 5 years because I'd started up a financial services training company on the side that sort of took off during the boom in Dubai. And when the financial crisis hit, I took a year off and wrote my first book, which is Bank 2.0. That became a bestseller in 20 countries. It was translated into a dozen languages, and that led me to sort of get on the speaking circuit talking about the future of banking and how technology was changing money and payments and those things. And that led me to the very obvious next decision, which was to start my own NeoBank, as we call it, a next-generation bank based on the smartphone, which I call Moven. So Moven is a startup based in New York. We've raised $24 million to date. We have essentially the world's first downloadable bank account. You can sign up in the app for a bank account. It takes you less than 2 minutes. And today we send you a card, a typical MasterCard that you can use. But in the future, we won't even have to send you a card. You'll just be able to use your phone. And on top of that, I run a radio show, which is called Breaking Bank, and that's the #1 fintech radio show on the planet. And on top of that, I speak around the world on the future, and last year I did 39 countries. So basically, I'm a pretty busy guy.
It's a really amazing story.
Let me more of a story about so I was actually on the book tour for my first book, Bank 2.0. I had done Singapore was the launch in April of 2010. And then I went to London and then New York. And New York, I met Alex Sion. Alex is my co-founder at Moven. So that was that meeting that we had at the book launch was when I first met him. And then I went from New York to LA, and I attended a breakfast with a group called Metal, which is run by a radio host out of Los Angeles, a guy by the name of Ken Ratowski. He runs a radio show called Business Rockstars. And Ken hosted this breakfast, and there's VC guys there and movie producers. Tim Kring, who's the producer of Heroes, was there, and Billy Zane, the actor, and then there's all these entrepreneurs and startup guys and so forth there as well. And they asked me to talk about the book, and I talked about, and they said, what's the future of banking? So I described this bank account in the future, how you download it to your phone and how you use your phone to pay, and that you wouldn't go to a bank for advice because you'd be able to build that advice into the experience. And as I was describing all of this, one of the guys there, his name's William Quigley, he runs a business called Clearstone Ventures, a VC. He said, yeah, but banks aren't going to do this, are they? And that was the moment when sort of the switch flipped in my head, and I was like, you're right. That's the opportunity. So literally, Within an hour of that breakfast finishing, I was at home in one of my friend's places in Malibu where I stayed that weekend, and I had registered the domain name moveandbank.com. And we also registered the domain MovenBank, right, which was a contraction of that. Now, as we started to roll this out, and I got my mates who are all passionate about this stuff to sort of get involved and help me with this, my friends like Alex and others around the world. As we started testing the concepts, and we got in front of millennials, who is our key target segment market for this, and they would say, so when are you guys launching Moven? And we'd say, why don't you guys call it Moven Bank? And they'd say, you guys aren't a bank, you're cool.
You just described it saying that the light bulb went on. The company literally touches on three main industries. You have banking, you have mobile commerce, you have the payments industry, and yet it's not a bank, it's not a telecom company, and it's not a card company. You've combined all three industries into a digital exclusive business model. You're moving away from traditional banking and financial products and allowing people to create these digital accounts to help them manage tracking their debit cards and their spending. We know what it is. Tell us the why.
As an entrepreneur, there's got to be a mixture of passion or belief in what you're doing. But there's always an element, if we're honest, there's always an element of ego to this as well. And so the two sides, the passion for this was I wanted to redefine what people thought of as a bank account. Right? That in 10, 15 years' time, when people are saying, looking back and saying, the bank account that we have today is so different from what it was 40 years ago, these are the guys that did it first. These are the guys who started that. That was the first, that was the passion. The second piece of this was that as I would go around and talk to banks around digital disruption and what technology was going to do and how consumer behavior was changing and so forth, they would always say, yes, you're right, but this stuff's really hard to do. And I would say, no, it's not. Let me show you. I'll build it. And so that, that was a motivation as well to show that how it could be done. Now, in all fairness, it's not been easy, but at the same time, it's not been impossible. It's been from my point of view, a really interesting growth experience personally, and been a phenomenal business to be involved in and startup. I mean, when I was 10 years ago, if you'd said to me I'd be sitting on a business worth $100 million that had raised $24 million, I'd be like, no way. That's crazy talk. So it's just, and then, to have the success I've had with the books is just, I feel every day I wake up, high-fiving myself, it's just great.
The listeners out there are thinking to themselves, they might have their own little secret sauce. What has been the company's differentiator? Because now we're starting to see some competition come in, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but what has been the company's differentiator? And then, what is your differentiator? What makes you different, special, that people are going to sort of gravitate towards you as opposed to anybody else coming down the pipe that is creating things as we move forward into this digital world that we live in?
So, when banks try and do this stuff, they're slow and unwieldy, and, they often sort of do half-baked stuff, So, good examples of that sort of sit in the industry now is you have, Chase and Wells and B of A. These guys have some competent apps, but you can't open a bank account on the phone, there's still a strong preference for you to go into the branch. You can do it online, but even then there's some pretty significant restrictions. So, but there's another element of this which is really, from our point of view, the piece of this where we've had the most success, I think, is really figuring out behaviorally what makes a real impact. What do people really want? And if you're a bank looking at this, you'd say, well, they want access to their balance, to see their balance on their phone. Right? And maybe you'd say, and they want to see a balance before they make a payment and after they make their payment, and they can't do that with a piece of plastic. So that would be a good place to start. And that's sort of how we started with this, but then also, we said, but if you download a bank account to your phone, it doesn't have to be designed like the existing ecosystem. So we created this artifact, which we call the spending meter, and I don't know if you profiled it on your show when you talked about Moven previously, but it's when you start the app, the first thing you see is the spending meter, which immediately gives you an indication of your financial health. If you're spending below your typical or average spending for the month, then the whole app, the mood of the app is green. It turns green. If you're spending above your typical spending for the month, the app turns red, or orange, actually. It's not quite red. So, and you'll see that the main artifact in the center of the screen, the spending meter, will say, you've spent this much this month, you've spent this much over your typical spend. So immediately you're starting to get this feel for whether or not this month you're on track and this month you're using your funds wisely. Now, it turns out that actually, if you look at our customers in New Zealand working with Westpac, our partner down there, or when you look at a third of our customers here in the US that use the app on a daily basis, they start the app up in the morning and they look at the spending meter, not their bank balance, to figure out, can they go out for dinner tonight with friends? Can they go to the movies tonight? Can they afford that? That's becoming a really central part to their day-to-day financial decision-making. And so that is a really unique artifact. No one else has anything like that in respect to that interaction. The other component, of course, is real-time. When you tap your phone or you swipe the card to pay, you get an instant receipt to your phone, and the receipt tells you, this is the merchant, let's say Starbucks. This is Starbucks. Your bill is, your transaction was $11.50. But did you know that in terms of dining out, you've already spent $256 this month, and that's already above your typical, which at this stage of the month would have been $170. Right? So then you're looking at that. It's the 6th or 7th of the month, and you're looking at that and you're going, I've spent $250 on dining out. And you're sitting in Starbucks when this happens, you're getting this in real time, within half a second usually, and suddenly now there's a cognitive, behavioral association with the fact that this type of activity, eating in a restaurant or sitting in an Uber taxi or, being in a Starbucks coffee shop, these behaviors have a correlation with my financial health. The decisions I make, how many times I go to a Starbucks in a week, this is going to affect, where I sit at the end of the month in terms of my ability to save.
You want your customers, our listeners, to make these smart spending decisions on the go. Obviously, this is a very specific niche audience that we have, and you want to provide these solutions to their everyday problems. You talked about the business model in terms of, we had Alex Hart on, who was the former CEO and president of MasterCard, and he was also on the board at FICO. And we talk about FICO scores, but there's something that I read, I believe, something about the social media and how that's going to build the score. And so you might want to talk a little bit about, how you build that into the models that you might use in terms of spending and things of that nature.
So I think what we worked out fairly early on was that there's, if you take the population and whether it is getting healthier from a physical or a physical health perspective, or whether it is getting healthier from a financial perspective, there's a portion of the population who attacks this with real purpose and is very disciplined about how they approach that. Okay, I need to lose weight, so I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go every day, I'm going to go between these hours, and this is what I'm going to do. Right? And they can stick to that because they're quite disciplined. Same with budgeting. You find groups of people who feel very comfortable. They plan out their budget. They know exactly what they're going to spend on each sort of activity during the month, and they're able to manage that proactively. As the sort of month plays out. If an unexpected expense comes along, they drop off, spending in one other area. But that only is typically about 15 to 20% of the population. The rest of us just don't have that discipline. So, and I don't put myself in that bucket. So what we wanted to do was create a tool that didn't require you to commit to planning. All I had you to do was use the app. And at the end of the month, if you kept it in the green, you'd save money. And it was pretty much that simple. So it's a gamification tool.
Our startup round is sponsored by TrustSmarter.com. Trusts and estates are not just for the rich and wealthy. Trust Smarter focuses on you, the consumer. Trust Smarter educates you with articles, free guides, and information on estate planning using trust to connect you, the consumer, with the various corporate fiduciaries who want help with your trust and estate. That's TrustSmarter.com. And when asked, how did you find out about us? Type in Listen Up. Trust Smarter is a virtual cash incorporated company. Okay, now back to the show. Tell us a little bit about your key partnerships. I know that you mentioned Westpac outside the U.S., and obviously you're partnering with a bank here in the U.S. You mentioned a little bit about raising the $24 million. Tell us a little bit about some of these key partnerships that you have.
So we've got a range of different partnerships. In the U.S., we have a bank partner called CBW Bank, which is out of Kansas City. They provide us with the FDIC guarantee for the deposits that we take. But for all intents and purposes, most customers would see us as the provider of the bank account. It's our responsibility to do that, but we have a bank partner that guarantees the funds and helps us with money movement. In New Zealand, we have Westpac, who's licensed the app technology that we've developed and is giving that to their customers. And TD Bank in Canada just launched with us a couple of months ago, and they're doing the same. So that's sort of really in terms of the technology that underpins Moven, and from a licensing perspective, Canada and New Zealand are where we license our technology. But in the U.S., we have broader relationships for our consumer space. So we've got a very good relationship with MasterCard, who supports us with new technologies and so forth. We have partnerships with other fintechs in the space. A common bond for helping people refinance their student loans at much cheaper rates. We have I can't think of their name.
Payoff, the credit card consolidator.
Yeah, Payoff. Thank you.
I'm always here to help you, Brett.
Yeah, that's fine. So Payoff, for credit card consolidation, we're doing some stuff with Lending Club right now, and some others, we're also talking with Betterment about maybe doing some sort of investment savings option when we launch Impulse Savings, in May. So
that's very exciting, because I was actually going to bring up Betterment. As you know, Alex Hart, who we just had on the show, he's actually on the board at Lending Club. Some really good key partnership. We talked a little bit about the partnerships, so let's just switch gears just a little bit and talk a little bit more about your competitors. So who are they? What's the strategy for Moven going forward to basically stay on track as number one in the SAFE digital banking, digital money management platform, using all the various tools which are obviously tied to the debit card, and then basically expanding into this peer-to-peer lending, digital wallet competition from On Deck and some of these other companies. But then maybe talk to us a little bit about your competition out there.
So, when I did media training in the old days, I was told never to talk about the competition. No, I think, in our space is sort of this hybrid or, bank account, and rethinking that, particularly as you're going to see our product as it takes shape later in the year. We have Impulse Savings, which is the next feature we launch, and then Emergency Credit, which is sort of like a real-time credit facility based on your behavior as you walk into a store. So if you walk into Trader Joe's and we know you spend $600, then we'll be able to say, you've only got $300 in the account. Would you like the additional $300 so you can complete your grocery shopping? So that, there's some features to that, which means that if you think about where the bank account is going, we've really created something that gives you access to credit, access to savings, but not with any of the conventional product structures that you would see in a typical bank. And we haven't seen anyone do anything like that yet. But on the mobile front, there are some competent companies. If you're looking at investment, then obviously you've got the Wealthfront and Betterments. If you look at lending, you've got the P2P players. I like what Credit Karma's been able to do on that front. One really interesting approach with that is LendUp out of San Francisco with Sasha Orloff, and they're able to give you this product that helps you. You lend a little bit of money, but at the same time, you're boosting your credit, sort of a credit score trainer. And then, there's on sort of the mobile bank account, per se, you've got Simple. Simple launched about a year before us. But, and Simple, they got a phenomenal product, and of course, they were acquired by BBVA a couple of years ago. So
now, hadn't they partnered up with the Bancorp.com out of Delaware with Betsy Cohen?
They did. They launched with Bancorp, and I don't know whether you saw recently when Google dropped their card program, attached to the wallet. Then Simple, because of their Bancorp association, Google was also on Bancorp, was able to pick up some of those card holders from Google. Google abandoned their.
Actually, Betsy Cohen is actually from the Philadelphia area. She owned Jefferson Bank in Philadelphia that was purchased by Hudson Bank, and then of course TD Bank that you're working with in Canada then purchased Hudson Bank. Musical chairs with all the different banks that are being bought and sold and moved around. You mentioned Betterment, John Stein, obviously being the CEO. What is your definition then of success? I mean, because obviously you've had, sounds as if, some terrific success to date. So how do you define it?
Oh, as I said, I now have to set the bar higher. A few years ago, I remember I was probably 2002, 2003. I remember sitting with a friend and I attended an event, and there was this phenomenal keynote speaker. It was actually the scientist Michio Kaku, and I said, I really want to do that for a living. I want to be able to make a living off speaking, and I'd love to write books, but so I thought that's going to be my goal for when I'm 50 and retire, and I can do that. And that sort of came a lot earlier than I expected that I was able to do that. And the startup, obviously, incredible opportunity. But for Moven, I think our success is, I guess we would define our success twofold. One is, I'd like to see 50 million people around the world using our app to help them manage their money and save money. And, a key mechanism, and that's a sort of a distributed approach. So this is why we're licensing our technology to other banks as well, because unlike Uber, you can't just take a bank and go offshore because there's all these regulatory hurdles you have every new country you go to.
White labeling your technology to the various banks.
Yeah, but at the same time, while we white label it, and launch it in someone else's environment or within someone else's brand, it's unmistakably a Moven experience, and that's really what for us is important. And if half of those customers of those 50 million that we're targeting over the next few years, if half of them are able to then use the tool to constructively save money, more money than they did before they used the app, then that's a phenomenal result. So that's really what we're aiming for.
Can you tell us a little bit about a business failure that you experienced and what you learned and how our audience can gain that type of wisdom from that failure?
The steepest learning curve I've had with Moven was actually funding. Is having to go out and raise money, and it's really tough. So if you are thinking of starting your own business as an entrepreneur and you think you're going to go out and raise money, let me tell you that was where my steepest learning curve was. And I'd worked in the finance sector, but this is a whole new competency. But in terms of failures, I had a training company in the Middle East, which I had started, and I had various partners involved in that. And we launched this thing in 2001. It required me to move to Dubai in 2005 to cope with the growth. And by 2008, we were generating $4 to $5 million a year in training revenue. So it was a pretty significant business. And we had offices in China, in Hong Kong, and in Dubai where I was based, and it was going fantastic. We went from 4.9 million in revenue in 2008 down to 375,000 in 2009.
Yeah, devastating.
Can you imagine that contraction?
No, it's pretty devastating.
Yeah, and you couldn't anticipate that. Obviously the financial crisis, the first thing people cut was training budget. But in the midst of that, I had a partner that provided us a key element of our training, which was a professional certificate. and this partner was based in the US, and he got into financial trouble, and he was a lawyer. So his solution was to try and circumvent the business that we had built and try and capture all of that revenue from us by sort of cutting us out of the loop, right? It was a really, really difficult time, and this guy just got crazy and started sending everyone legal notices. And in the end, the entire thing collapsed. He didn't get anything out of it. We were able to re-engineer the business, and it's now back up to doing a couple of million a year in revenue. But I've got I'm just an equity investor in it now, and I've got a friend running that business. But the lesson that I learned from that was, if you are going to partner with someone and you've got complementary businesses, or you think there's complementary, one, your business shouldn't be reliant on the partner, because then there's huge potential issues with that. And you've got to anticipate any partnership could end in a divorce. And if it does, can you exit that relationship cleanly without massive impact to the business or any reputational risk to the brand, right? And that was sort of the biggest lesson I learned from that. I'm not one of these cynical guys who is I don't like working with lawyers and going the litigation route if I can avoid it. And I'm not talking about that necessarily, but I'm talking about that it's really important if you're building a startup and you want to find a partner to help you build the startup, or if you're partnering as businesses, find people that have the same passions. And and they're really looking at that end game with a different sort of energy and passion, and not that it's just a good business relationship.
Yeah, that's why I asked you about your partnership, because they're critical. You talked a little bit earlier about the technology disruption, and I know you enjoy that.
Look, I think maybe there are 4 key disruptive areas I've explored in my new book, Augmented. So Augmented, the subtitle is Life in the Smart Lane. So it really looks at how technology is going to dramatically change the way we live over the next 20, 30 years. It's not a singularity book. It really does look at sort of social impact, which jobs are at threat and what opportunities are there and things like that. But there are 4 major disruptive forces. The first is obviously artificial intelligence, and closely related to that is robotics. The second is smart infrastructure, everything from autonomous vehicles and transport systems through to renewable energy and smart grids that are magnitudes more efficient and cheaper than running fossil fuel generation and 130 million wooden poles in the US that run electricity around the place. Resource allocation, smart government, smart cities, things like that fall into that category. Then everywhere experiences, distributed technology everywhere. When everything is smart, when your home is smart, when your car is smart, when you can talk to a simple AI or voice agent, whether it's Amazon Echo or the next generation Siri, and it conduct commerce for you, like booking a restaurant or booking flights for you. Sensors that we ingest and wear in our bodies that lead us to the 4th disruptive technology, which is health tech and gene editing and changing the way we think about healthcare and the way we manage our health. These are the big 4 areas. So, I think, if you're going to say banking, from a structural perspective, we've got the blockchain. It's going to be important. Commerce, which is going to be relegated, agents, machine-to-machine commerce is going to be huge. Think about a self-driving car in 10 years' time that is owned by maybe a shared collective group of people, or maybe owned by a city, and then it logs on to Uber for 3 hours a day and drives through the Uber network as an autonomous vehicle. It's getting paid. It's got a bank account, but that bank account isn't owned by a human. It doesn't have to pay tax. There's some really interesting things to think about. Overall, the biggest one for finance is advice. It's going to be completely disrupted by artificial intelligence and technology. And if you're an advisor in the financial services space right now,
robo-advisors, stuff like that? Like robo-advisors?
Robo-advisors are huge. Robo-advisors are going to be better at investing than human advisors. They're going to know your investment behavior better than a human, relationship manager ever could. They're going to be able to, adjust and adapt quicker. So you could put in tolerances, and you won't have to call up your agent and say, sell this asset class or sell that stock because it's looking like it's going down. Or they won't have to remember that you told them that if the price of gold goes below $1,100, you want to sell it, because that'll be automatically managed by a robo-advisor. But the other more important thing is advice itself is changing. It's becoming real time and contextual.
Our fast pitch round is actually sponsored by Chadrow.net. That's CHADROW.net. Chadrow.net. Startups, bootstrappers, those who like to leverage resources are price smarter. When hiring an attorney, you apply these same smarter maxims. One of our business's greatest costs can be paying your lawyer high hourly rate. More and more businesses will use Chadrow.net to start up their businesses from S to C corporations and LLCs and so much more. Chadrow.net can help you with your contract reviews, lease agreement, changing tax laws, and any other type of legal issue or problem that needs a solution. All this takes time and effort, so you don't want these legal issues to take away from running your business. Your day-to-day main focus is growing your business, so Chadrow.net created a business legal service plan. Just listen up to what the business legal service plan provides you. All lawyers and CPA professionals in the directory are verified as in good standing with their respective state bar and state board of accountancy admitted. These lawyers and CPA professionals provide you and your business with legal and or tax advice. Get access to NDAs, lease agreements, and more. The best part, no more being nickel and dime for a 6-minute telephone call. No more dealing with billable hours because Chadrow.net is not a law firm. Instead, just pay one upfront, fully disclosed low fee. See for yourself now the business legal service plan at Chadrow.net. Special savings today for the listeners of My Listen Up show when you enter Mitchell at checkout. Don't forget, Chadrow.net. Mitchell at checkout. Chadrow.net. Get legal solutions for life. Chadrow.net. Enter Mitchell at checkout. Now, let's get back to it. In terms of the traditional trust business, you can use disruptive digital technology to change the game there. When you look at the fiduciary business today, trust, state, when you look at the actual corporate fiduciaries today, there's not a whole lot of innovation. There's maybe more followers than there are leaders. They don't really quite leverage the technology like they could. From that perspective, you're going to find like the digital fiduciary and digital estate products and services going forward be disruptive for your typical trust company.
I think it may not necessarily be a structural thing. There are definitely going to be areas structurally where advice, at least for the next 10 or 20 years, is going to be still of value. But operationally, management of a trust, there's no reason that humans would need to be involved. Right? So that's where you plug it in. And that's where you can get the capabilities that AI would really be where it would be differentiated. I think also there's an element of in the past when you thought about a trust or an investment advisor, say a family office function or something like that, where you would go to a human who knew more about the subject than you did. This basic principle we call information asymmetry. But information asymmetry has been eroding ever since the Internet came on the scene. And AI really is sort of the last piece of that puzzle where it's going to be very, very hard for humans to stay differentiated. Because at the end of the day, an AI will be able to deal with so much more information and data. And that's the informational advantage that AI is going to have. So if you're an analyst or an advisor taking in information to give advice, then the ability to absorb or synthesize that information is key to your success. And that's where AIs will have the upper hand.
We talked a little bit about trusting smarter, and as far as like banking smarter, digital banking tips from a digital banking perspective.
So, I'm not a personal finance guy, but I will say that there are, there's elements here. We are seeing predictive analytics, which are going to start to be very, very important and impactful. So, for example, if you're thinking of you're thinking of buying a new, Oculus Rift VR headset right now, because they're getting popular, or, PlayStation's launching one, HTC's launched one. So you think, I'd really like one of those things. But then you say, I've got enough money in the account, I could afford to buy that this month, But you've forgotten that your life insurance policy, you're going to get a bill for your life insurance policy in a couple of days. Right? Now, and then suddenly you're left with a situation where you're going to be under pressure to pay your renewal on your insurance, but you've got this brand new VR headset. These are areas which are just data problems, and so we're now starting to see tools like Prism Money and BillGuard, which was acquired by the other P2P lender, Prosper. And things like that, where they're starting to look historically at your bill payments and activity, and now starting to think about that predictively. So I think that's going to be a very important area where people should try some of those tools out and see if that's helpful for them. And I think if you are interested in investment, either investing in something like Lending Club, which is it is analogous to the old fixed deposit or CD that you get from a bank, but a higher interest rate, and now demonstrably lower risk over time. There's some risk, but for the trade-off of the higher interest rate, you get nowhere near commensurate with trading in a more aggressive or volatile asset class. And then if you want to put some money into Betterment or Wealth Fund or one of these guys, and to try out robo-advising, I would recommend it, because I think as you start using these tools, I think over the next few years it's going to be a really important vehicle for people. It's going to start off as a supplementary investment strategy, and then over time that could become their primary. So I definitely, if you're in it, I'd try it out.
Very good. Next set of questions, fast answers, and let's see what you have to say. This would actually be your mantra, a quote that
keep moving fast.
Besides your book, can you recommend a book that's influenced you, that benefited you, and that could also benefit our listeners?
So I'm going to go a little bit left of field here. A book that, if you're interested in what's happening in VR and in the world and how it's going to be impacted, read a book by Neil Stephenson called Snow Crash.
Okay.
I think it was 95. It's a sci-fi book, but it's such an incredible look at how VR could change the way we live. And as a futurist, we're finding increasingly that sci-fi is informing life. So,
besides Moven, which we love, name an app that you like, that you enjoy, that you use all the time, that just makes your life a lot easier and obviously could be beneficial to other people out there.
Yeah, it's a pretty obvious one, but I use Google Maps all the time, because when I'm in a new city, Google Maps, I would supplement with something like a Swarm or Foursquare for local knowledge. That's one that's really important to me. And of course, the various social media platforms.
The most important business advice you ever received?
So I remember when I was early in the sales cycle, I had a really experienced partner from Deloitte. He gave me some simple advice. He said, if you want to start up a good business relationship with someone, go into that environment with the first meeting and ask the person, if there were 3 things that I could solve for you today, 3 problems I could solve for you today, what would they be? And you're guaranteed that one of them is somewhere where you can add value.
Terrific. Someone that you look up to, it could be a hero, someone that you respect, and maybe a little bit as to why.
Well, I should say my dad. I learned a lot from my dad, but at the same time, there's one guy I really enjoy reading now, and he's a fantastic thinker, is Ramez Nam. And Ramez is an ex-Microsoft guy and did some work for DARPA, but he now writes science fiction, and he just received the Philip K. Dick award this year for his book Apex. But if you want to follow his blog, this guy is one of the smartest guys on the planet.
Terrific. We really appreciate all the time. Our wrap-up round, it's actually sponsored by banksmarter.com. It's all about exploring alternatives to traditional banking, from digital assets to fintech to FinServe. More and more consumers are banking smarter. Again, head on over to banksmarter.com. That's BANKSMARTER.com. How else can people communicate with you, stay in touch with you, and maybe some parting words for our listeners before we sign off here?
Sure. So the easiest way to keep in touch with me is my Twitter feed. @BrettKing is my Twitter name. Or if you want to contact me via LinkedIn or Facebook, I'm truly digital in respect to those sort of relationships now. Moven.com, BrettKing.com is my personal website if you want to know a little bit more about me. And if you're interested in the book, check out AugmentedBook.com. But the parting words would be, if you enjoyed this interview and you think it's some value, wait till you read Augmented Life in the Smart Lane. It's going to blow your mind.
You can get it at AugmentedBook.com. My book club recommendation back at mitchellchadro.com/books. It's your #1 resource for book reviews and recommendations. To see more of my recommendations and recommendations of our guests, just go to mitchellchadro.com/books. That new book, Augmented Life in the Smart Lane. That's really awesome, Brett. I just want to thank you so very much. Had a lot of fun talking to you. Just wanted to thank you again for everything.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks very much.
Hey, you take care, Brett. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Until next time, my trusted friends. Sign up for my email list at mitchellchadro.com/sign-up. Please provide a well-written review in iTunes. Go over to mitchellchadro.com/iTunes. It takes 2 minutes, but it helps others find the show. Subscribe anywhere. We are on Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, or any popular podcast aggregator. One of my favorites is actually Overcast.fm. So if you head on over to mitchellchadro.com/overcast, you can subscribe on that podcast aggregator. Thank you again, and I look forward to our next show.